Phoenix and Flagstaff is one of those key investments. And you can see here, this is a project that currently exists. The blue arrows on this drawing are part of the project that's currently already funded by the State Transportation Board. They don't have enough money to complete the project. They can only put the third lane in both directions for a portion of that distance. And so we're able to use that money that's in the infrastructure budget to finish the project early. We're putting this money to work. The last estimate I saw is the shovels will be in the ground before December of this year. And so these projects are going to move very quickly and help alleviate some of the most dangerous road sections that we have in the state. So congestion reduction, I'm sure any of you who tried to travel that road, you remember it. It's not a fun time to sit in traffic. So we're putting that money to work right away. Another great one that will be seen all over the state and not just in this one area is our fully funding of road maintenance. For the first time since the Great Recession, we're able to actually maintain the good roads that we have at the level that is being called for. This finishes the project that we started last year where we moved funding, needed funding from 29% to 79%. This year we top it off, we finish it. Again, this is all made possible by that public safety fee that allowed this money to be freed up, this infrastructure money to be freed up to be put to good use. And we know that this is good government because for every dollar we spend on maintaining a good road, we save $6 in rebuilding maintenance, right? To rebuilding or fixing damaged and dangerous roads. So this project we're pretty excited about. We're going to be making good headway on the roads in the state. But we also recognize that roads aren't the only infrastructure that the 21st century economy is running on. We are also prioritizing broadband expansion. According to federal communication information, 825,000 Arizonans lack access to high-speed internet. They don't have the option to, and I'm sure most of you guys know about that. I grew up in a rural area. I remember this as well. For a 21st century economy, we have to have access across the state for this. And in addition to that, so we're dedicating money to building that infrastructure, $6 million in ongoing and $1 million one-time funding for grants to attract these enterprises. We're going to build the the Rural Broadband Development Grant Program that's going to provide money to local areas to provide this infrastructure to build what is needed to carry this high-speed internet. But we're not waiting. We're not just doing that. We're also looking for the future. Only 10.6% of Arizonans right now have access to super high-speed internet, what we're calling gigabit internet, which is what the 21st century is going to be built on, right? Super fast information, and we want to expand that as well. So in addition to trying to catch up on the high speed, we're also pushing forward on the super high-speed internet access across the state. And this is something that we're very excited about, and as you can see from our map, besides New Mexico, we are trailing all of our neighboring states in this process, so we're very excited about that. We also have dedicated existing dollars, so no new spending, but existing dollars that currently exist in the Arizona Commerce Authority to develop and implement a state broadband directory. So these projects aren't going to be just built without a plan. We're going to have a central place where all of this can be funneled through and organized and spent efficiently. So broadband expansion, another high priority. We're also rolling back some of the problems that we created for ourselves back in our session, which was shifting money for services from the state to the counties. One of the ways is through the Department of Juvenile Corrections. We've been asking for cost sharing for the last few years for counties to provide a portion of the amount of money it takes to help these troubled kids in the Department of Juvenile Corrections. We're wrapping that up. We're going to be taking on the full funding for these programs from the state level, freeing up county money to do other projects that the counties see necessary. This is one of those things that, like Matt talked about, we had to do. It was a hard decision to make. It wasn't necessarily always equitable. Counties weren't paying for the number of kids they were sending out to juvenile corrections. They were paying per population, right? It was all based on the size of the county, and that didn't necessarily correspond. And again, we're rolling that back. We're making these changes to free up that county money so that localities can do what they need to. And then I'm sure what all of you guys are mostly excited about, and we're really excited about, is providing funding for the Mariposa Port cold storage, right? I know I'll go over this. I'm sure you're all well aware of it. Arizona used to be #1 in transmitting, different goods across the border. We've since slipped to 3rd because Texas did a strategic investment, did a bunch of cold storage. Now there's all of those agricultural products that were traveling out of Mexico now go through Texas, right? So we are committed to changing that. We're going to be committing $700,000 of state money in addition to the $300,000 of local partners, which is the county and the Fresh Produce Association of America is a big part of this as well. So we're using local dollars in addition to state dollars to make this thing happen very quickly. And we're excited about this because the USDA has estimated that just the berry industry in Mexico is $1 billion a year flowing across the border, right? All of that money is bypassing us in Arizona because we don't have a port that can handle cold storage while they do the inspections. And it's not just berries, it's produce, it's all produce and vegetables, but in addition to pharmaceuticals that need refrigeration while they're being inspected. So this is a really exciting project that the governor has been thrilled about and is ready to commit the money to this. So we're very excited to do this project. Again, a one-time investment that's going to pay off into the future, a lot like our roads and our internet infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt. He'll cover education.
Thanks, Seth. So education continues to be the top priority of the governor. We're putting $637 million in investments next year. And we've layered them out. We'll talk about several of them. The teacher pay package, enrollment, and inflation growth, as I mentioned earlier. New school construction, we're doing something quite different that will impact southern Arizona in particular. The additional assistance restoration, these monies are used for soft capital, technology, textbooks. They can also be used for operations, support staff, faculty. Results-based funding, we're expanding that. The building renewal grants, providing more money for that, as I mentioned earlier. Our school safety package that we'll talk about. The CTE incentive program, this is career and technical education. Those trades, it's been irrelevant to the workforce that's coming to Arizona, and it's already here, making sure that high school graduates have those certifications so that they can step into a job and be ready to get to work, and some other investments there. We have $104 million in new higher education investments, and we'll talk about the Teachers Academy in particular, but the Pima Aviation Center. Everyone was very, very excited in Tucson about this Pima College investment. I don't believe we've made a state general fund investment in Pima or Maricopa for a number of years, so this is welcomed to a number of people. We are delivering on the promise and making sure that teachers get the raise they've earned. We're including $165 million this year for the next phase of 20 by 2020, as well as the $68 million for additional assistance. Now, the additional assistance package is phased in over 5 years, so by 2023, we're expecting to add $372 million in ongoing funding for that effort. And then the teacher pay plan should be finished by fiscal year 2021 or school year 2020. So all told, once these are put into our K-12 system, $1 billion will have been added through these initiatives alone. And that doesn't include inflation and enrollment growth and our school facilities and other programs. We're expanding results-based funding. This program was designed in 2018 to reward schools and incentivize schools to expand and replicate practices and programs that we know lead to student success. And in 2018 and 2019, we used the AZ Merit, which was the statewide standardized test, and said if you scored in the top 10% on that test, you would get a per pupil distribution. So schools that served a student population that qualified for the free and reduced lunch price program of 60% or more, they would receive a $400 per pupil amount. They qualified and were in the top 10%. For those who are under the 60% threshold, they receive $225 Now, about 298 schools received funding in 2018, about 285 schools in 2019, for a total of 40 million roughly each year. But we always had planned to use the letter grade system, the A through F. You may be familiar with that. My kid goes to an A-rated school. My kid goes to a B-rated school. Hopefully, I don't know if they're making bumper stickers for going to an F-rated school, but you get the point. It's a letter grading system that takes into account a number of categories, such as performance on the AZ merit, but also student growth. Because sometimes, I'm a former school teacher. I taught 10th and 11th grade English. And every one of my kids had different starting points. They had different experiences that led them to their point. So it certainly matters where they end up, but how far they get from the beginning is important and is taken into account in the A to F letter grade. Graduation rates, attendance rates, those are indicators that we know lead to student success. So the A to F letter grading system is what we're planning to use moving forward into 2020. So all A schools will receive either a $400 or $225 per pupil award, depending on the free and reduced lunch rate. We estimate that to be 454 schools. But we take it a step further. We want to acknowledge and recognize the excellence of our B schools that are serving high-need populations. And how we categorize that is the free and reduced lunch rate percentile, 60% or more, similar to what we do for our A schools. If you are a B school and you serve student a population of 60% FRL, you will receive a $225 per pupil amount. And we think that's an important step forward in recognizing excellence in high-need areas. So this is the school safety package. For the last 3 funding cycles for school resource officers, these are the Cops on Campus partnerships between a school district and a law enforcement agency. There has always been a greater demand than the funding to meet that demand. In this past grant cycle, 89 SROs were requested and were not funded. So the executive budget includes $9 million to address that need. And we also are working with ADE to make the application cycle for the next funding period earlier, so that maybe actually this summer, making the application period this summer so that we can figure out what the total need is and put it in our budget for next year, because we're going to begin planning in 6 months for next year's budget. We also include $6 million for a school counselor and social worker program. We recognize the importance of mental health in improving school safety. Last year we included $10 million in behavioral health counselors for schools that meet certain income requirements. This year we're establishing a grant program similar to the SROs with $6 million, and school districts or charter schools can come in and apply for a social worker or a school counselor. And we double that program in fiscal year 2021 for a total of $12 million. The CTE incentive program, we're proposing to provide $10 million, which equates to $1,000 to each school with high school graduates that have earned an approved industry credential. Right now, our Arizona Commerce Authority it's a public-private partnership, and it does economic forecasting of what jobs are going to be in Arizona in the next 5 to 7 years. And they convey that information to the Department of Education, who then put together a catalog that our schools can use when they're trying to decide which courses to offer that are relevant, workforce relevant in the near term. So we're just suggesting, there are some examples down below: manufacturing, business and financial services, healthcare, construction. IT is another one. What we're proposing is $1,000 payment to the school side for each high school graduate, so that school side can expand classroom capacity for these high-need areas, or add more high-need areas to their course offering. And we hope to grow this in the coming years. Our charter school accountability package, we're including 10 new staff to keep up with caseload. Right now there are over 500 charter schools throughout the state. 17% of public school students attend the charter school. But we really haven't kept up pace with the number of staff to perform inspections consistent with current law, as well as implement the new financial framework that they're about to finalize. So this will allow for more on-site inspections. If there are complaints about the charter school, we'll have more folks to address those complaints and help provide a plan of correction for charter schools if any problems arise, especially on the financial side. The building renewal applications I mentioned earlier, they've more than tripled since 2013, and that's resulting in increased funding pressures. As I mentioned at the outset, $25 million in supplemental funding in our current year for a total spend on building renewal for schools of $76 million. And the blue curve represents where the spend rate was, or the utilization rate of the building renewal program was this time last year. And we still ran out of money. The red line represents where we are in terms of utilization this year. And you can see the sharp spike between November and December. That flat horizontal line represents the appropriation. That's how much money they have to spend. So obviously they're going to run out of money in the next couple of months, so we're including that supplemental package. And we've seen the need growing by 20% year over year. So our proposal is to provide $80 million in school facilities board resources for the upcoming 2020 fiscal year. This is a very important shift for the administration, and you're going to find this almost shocking. But in 2013, the legislature changed the law governing new school construction. The state is responsible for providing the resources to our district to build new schools if enrollment capacity, or if student enrollment exceeds capacity of the school. So in 2013, the state changed the law and said, all right, school district, you only qualify for a new school building if your enrollment exceeds capacity in the current year. So I'm sure you can imagine the problem that creates. The kids have already shown up and you don't have enough space for them, so then you get a new building. Well, these buildings take roughly 2 to 2.5 years to build. So now schools are forced to put kids into modular units, into classroom spaces that might not be the most ideal for learning in a particular subject. And it's also created cost pressures because schools realize kids are here, we need to get these buildings built as quickly as possible. So we're going to pay a premium to the construction companies to do that. So what the governor is proposing is going to the pre-2013 standard that says if you're an elementary school district and we see that your enrollment's going to exceed capacity in the next 2 years, that qualifies you for a new school. If you're going to exceed capacity in the next 3 years for a middle or high school, then that would qualify for school construction. And as you can see on the chart, under current law, the current year funding law, Chandler, Douglas, Maricopa, Pima, Stafford, and Somerton would qualify for new schools. But with our 2 or 3 year standard that we are proposing to return to, Levine, Bell, Yuma Union, and Swarita will now benefit from this program so that the buildings will be ready when those kids show up in the future. The Teachers Academy is incredibly important, $21 million to expand that. All 4 years of tuition will be covered for students in the colleges of education at our public universities. It's varied at each university on what we would cover, but after you apply a federal aid or your scholarships, need aid, institutional aid, and there's still money left over, the state will pick that up. So all 4 years will be covered. If a student's a junior or senior and they're pursuing a science, technology, engineering, or math degree outside of the College of Education, and they agree to join the Teachers Academy, we'll pick up their last dollar cost as well. And the whole idea of the Teachers Academy is we'll pay for your school, and for each year we do that, you agree to spend a year teaching in a public Arizona classroom. And so that's the relationship that we're trying to develop here. We're also providing a $1,000 stipend for students who agree to teach in our critical need areas, our critical need schools, rural schools, low-income schools, tribal schools, special education, or STEM-related courses. In addition, other students, non-resident students who are moving here to go to school here, we want them to stay here and come and teach in our classrooms, as well as community college post-baccalaureate students. So these are teachers who have alternative certificates, who are working toward their full credential, and they need to have that educational coursework to reach that full credential. We'll cover the last dollar cost of their learning as well. This is a teacher crisis. We need all hands on deck, and this is the way to do it. Targeted workforce investments, the $26 million for Pima and Maricopa community colleges. The $20 million of note is going to the Aviation Technology Center. We know that Southern Arizona is becoming an aerospace hub, and employers are asking for this. Davis-Monthan, Tucson International Airport, Raytheon, Bombardier, they are loving the results that they're getting right now out of the Technology Center. We're going to double the capacity there. And we're investing in some other areas of our public universities. One point I'd like to note is this $1 million for our National Guard tuition reimbursement program for universities and community colleges. We are the only state in the country that does not offer this funded benefit. And I wanted to make that very clear by this map. So hopefully that's the takeaway you have from that figure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marshall Pimentel, who will talk about some of our health and welfare investments, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Marshall Pimentel. I'm a budget analyst with OSPB, and I apologize ahead of time. I'm not quite as adept at speaking from memory, so I'll be rustling some papers. But the executive budget includes $2 million in fiscal year 20 and $9 million in fiscal year 21 to eliminate the Kids Care enrollment freeze. Kids Care is the Medicaid program that provides health insurance to over 32,000 Arizona children, and the federal government currently covers 100% of the cost of that program. However, by the end of September, that will drop to 90%, which isn't a drastic change, but there is a 2017 law in the books saying that if Kids Care enrollment will freeze if the federal government match drops below 100%. Therefore, without the repeal, approximately 25,700 children could lose their health insurance by fiscal year 2022. And without Kids Care, families may choose to forego medical coverage for their children, or they might reduce their working hours or stop working altogether in order to qualify for Medicaid, which is an outcome that nobody wants. Therefore, eliminating the freeze will allow parents to remain in the workforce or pursue other opportunities for advancement so that they can free themselves from the need for government assistance. In addition to securing health care for Arizona's children, the executive budget also allocates $56 million in federal funding for Arizona's child care subsidy program. This program is operated by the Department of Economic Security, and it provides child care subsidies to low-income and foster care parents. And right now, Arizona's rates are currently some of the lowest in the country, providing a reimbursement rate of about $365 per month to low-income parents and $406 per month to foster care parents. Therefore, they have to make up the difference between the subsidy and the actual cost of care, which can be difficult for those who work low-wage jobs. Therefore, half of the funding will go toward raising the subsidy from the current rate of about $576 per month to $775 per month, which will put us in line with our neighbors' maximum rates. The executive budget allocates the other half of this funding to ensure that 5,000 additional children will benefit from the program. While we're taking care of Arizona's children, we can't forget Arizona's senior population, and the executive budget allocates $11 million in federal funding for adult protective services and home and community-based services. Adult Protective Services provides case management to adults who have suffered from abuse, and in recent years, reports of abuse and neglect have risen by about 18% annually. In FY 2019, the executive used federal support to hire more staff to accommodate for caseload growth, and this will continue into fiscal year 20. In addition, the executive allocates new federal funding to address the backlog of individuals who need home and community-based services, which include adult daycare, home-delivered meals, transportation, and nursing home visits. The wait list continues to grow, and statewide it's estimated at about 3,200 seniors who are waiting to receive these services, And this commitment ensures that Arizona seniors are safe and can continue to live in their homes independently for as long as possible. Next, in 2018, the March of Dimes organization found that Arizona has a concerning lack of prenatal care resources, especially in the state's rural areas. This puts women and their unborn children at an increased risk for complications during pregnancy and after birth. And in order to better care for this vulnerable population, the executive allocates $1 million in order to fund telemedicine equipment that will better serve expectant mothers. And this funding will also be used to provide loan repayment assistance to those healthcare professionals who provide this vital service. And finally, as you can see from the chart, veteran suicides make up a larger portion of total suicides in Arizona when compared nationally or to our neighbors. And as this is a concern nationwide, federal legislation called the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act was passed in 2015, and that directed the VA to improve veteran access to mental health services. This manifested in Arizona's Be Connected program, which is partly administered by the Department of Veteran Services. This provides a 24/7 support call line, a resource matching tool, and training for community members who want to assist veterans in need. Last year, over 2,000 individuals were helped by the Be Connected program providers, and this funding, this $1 million in funding, will ensure that this critical program continues to benefit Arizona's active military personnel, veterans, and their families. And finally, I'll invite Matt back up to finish off the presentation.
Thanks, Marshall. So the water plan that I mentioned earlier is the chief component of our natural resources package, $30 million to support the DCP in fiscal year 20 with the $5 million supplemental this year. The $30 million will be used primarily to pay those who are legally entitled to the Colorado River water to keep that water in Lake Mead. That blue line represents the elevations in Lake Mead that are continuing to go down significantly. And the red line shows what the elevations will be under the drought contingency plan. Still going down, albeit at a slightly slower pace. The fact is, Arizona has to prepare for a drier future, but we need more time. The time that we need can be bought by keeping water in Lake Mead. Once you go below 1,000 feet, you start to reach what they call a dead pool situation, where the water cannot get over Hoover Dam, which has significant impacts to the Colorado River system and our hydroelectric power availability. So the idea is to try to keep as much water in Lake Mead, prevent dead pool, and provide a pathway forward for Arizona to prepare for that drier future. It's worth noting, though, that we've made the hard choices before. The 1980 Groundwater Management Act allowed Arizona to today use less water than we did when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. So we've made the tough choices before. We need to make them now. The drought contingency plan is pending in the legislature. We have a January 31st deadline, or else the federal government will step in and they'll make the decisions on behalf of the state, which is something that the governor does not want to see happen. Public safety, we've included a $74 million pay package with most of the money going to corrections and to public safety. We know that we have a very high vacancy rate in our Department of Corrections. We had 1% in 2011. It's now grown to about 14% in 2018, that gap between authorized positions and filled positions. Once you reach 20%, it becomes incredibly dangerous within a prison facility. And what we are seeing already is burnout. We're seeing significant increases in overtime. It's just not a safe situation for our officers to be in and for these prisons to experience. So we're including a 10% pay raise for them in year one, with another 5% in year two. Trooper pay is also a difficult challenge, and I know my friends from the city and the county may not meet this with joy, because it creates some competitive pressures on your own force, but our pay relative to our top law enforcement competitors is pretty low. The starting salary is at $47,000, and our proposal is to provide a 10% pay raise for our DPS troopers to bring them up into a more competitive area. Reducing turnover at our Department of Juvenile Corrections. $3 million for a 15% pay raise. This is just staggering. The Youth Correction Officer 1 in that table, that's an entry-level YCO, entry-level position, 100% turnover last year. How are you supposed to help rehabilitate youth when you have a different YCO, each week? Continuity is incredibly important. And the same goes for child safety. We know, based on national research, that if a child in state care has a turnover in caseworkers, the likelihood of that child being placed permanency goes down significantly. So we've had 35% turnover last year. Pay is the second reason behind not feeling valued or recognized, which I'm sure is tied to pay. And we've been unable to reach the legislative benchmark for hiring. They expect us to have 1,400 caseworkers, and as you can see, the red line below has been unable to reach that level, so we're hoping this will help. Our recidivism reduction efforts, these are the efforts that help ensure those who are released from prison do not return to prison or recidivate. And two key components of that are getting these inmates drug treatment. Many of them are beholden to substance abuse, and many of them lack education in order to be, they can't even read in many cases. And so we need to provide those services to them. But you can see the vacancy rate for our substance abuse counselors. Half of the positions are unfilled. And we have nearly 25% vacancy rate for our teachers. So that creates some problems when we can't get enough services to the inmates so that they truly can have a second chance upon release. This is a continued commitment to our Real Second Chance initiative. These are workforce programs that train inmates before they're released in jobs. Electrician, some construction trades, manufacturing trades. 2,000 have gone through the program, and nearly a half have jobs right now. And we're looking to expand that into coding, into that 21st century IT effort using existing resources. We're making other targeted investments in public safety, new troopers, as well as new equipment. This is a public safety fee. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a $32 fee that you pay at the time of registration, which covers the cost of the highway patrol and thereby frees up funding, and the counties and locals will love this. The HERF dollars, the Highway User Revenue Fund monies, that should be going for transportation projects in our county and local jurisdictions. Our proposal is to make public safety investments and not raise the public safety fee. We do not want it to go beyond $32. And in fact, if it can go down, we want to see that happen as well. So we're including a mix of general fund money and then expect to use the natural growth in public safety revenue to generally offset our investments we're making in this year. It's a complicated way of saying we're going to hold the rate, hold the line on keeping the $32 from going up any higher. So we maintain fiscal discipline in the entire budget. This is kind of the balance sheet at the end of the day. We're having baseline spending changes of $461 million, new initiatives of $538 million. Again, it's about $1 billion, half of which is one time. For a total spending package of $11.4 billion, we're depositing $542 million into the rainy day fund, and we're expecting to have an ending cash balance of $109 million and a structural balance of $244 million. So very, very good places to be in. And so this is part of the governor's State of the State address, but it just goes to the point that he wants to have a budget that reflects the priorities of Arizonans: public safety, child safety, education funding above and beyond inflation, and securing Arizona's fiscal future so that we can protect these critical investments into the future. I want to thank my staff, of course, Seth and Marshall, for coming out with me, as well as those who are back in Phoenix. I can't give them a shout out enough because they spent a lot of time working on an $11.3 billion budget that I think really moves Arizona in the right direction. The budget's available online, azgovernor.gov, and at our agency website, azosp.gov, and this PowerPoint presentation is available as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the audience if there are any. sir.
I just have a couple of comments, if you bear with me. Marshall's presentation, I agree with all of Marshall's presentations, especially the insurance for the kids, okay? Because that used to be very contentious at the state legislature. And you want to talk about closing the achievement gap, especially for Hispanic students, which is probably who's going to be covered by that extra money for health insurance. That's how you start to close the achievement gap, by making sure those kids are healthy when they go into kindergarten. The other thing that I want to, that $32 fee, as a member of the city council, I don't know what's going to happen in the state legislature, but my comment to you is, don't come back and try to use the HERF money again. You put us behind on taking care of our streets. We're way behind on that because you couldn't find a solution to fund them, so you did it on our backs. So leave us alone now. Let us fix our streets in our neighborhoods, and you figure out a solution. If they decide to do away with the $32, I don't know what they're going to do. But if they decide to do it, don't come back to the HERF fund, okay? You put us behind already by numerous years, uncountable miles that are deteriorating our streets. It can't just be the highways that you're worried about the cost between maintenance and having new asphalt paved, because we got streets to take care of too. I sit on the local school board, as you sit on the local school board, okay? And we're all very grateful for the extra funding that the governor has provided to us. I think it's a great start, especially with teacher pay. I just don't want you to think that during the recession that you've caught up with the funding, okay? Especially per pupil spending. Because we're still way behind it. We're still ranked at the bottom 3 nationally. So we want to make sure that we're thankful, we're grateful for the governor's good spirit in funding public education, but we also want you to understand we haven't made up for what we lost in 2008 on. On the community college, because I sit on the community college board, I just want to make sure that you understand that the 301 monies, the people of Santa Cruz County contribute to the 301 monies. Our community college only gets full-time equivalents of that share, where every other community college gets $200,000 up front. We don't get it, but we pay into the system. Why we don't get it, just because we are labeled a provisional community college, I don't know. But we've been working with that at the state legislature. You have a community college that not only gets the $200,000, but also gets $16 million extra a year in equalization fund. Equalization funding for 3 community colleges that say that they can't keep up with Pima nor Maricopa. Yet, we ourselves aren't in the position where you're giving us enough money so we can train our workforce to be competitive for local jobs and attracting business with a trained workforce down to our community. And we hope you consider that, especially having a community college board of education. I mean, like you say, that group of presidents that control how the community colleges go. Well, if you believe in that philosophy, then why don't you let the 3 university presidents control the university system and let the Board of Regents go? You know that's not going to happen. So, but you did it to the community college, and we feel here in Santa Cruz County that we're not being treated fairly as all the other community colleges. On the city, we just watch how the revenue sharing money is being distributed to all of the cities. That's basically my comments.
And just one overarching theme about the education progress we're making in terms of funding. The governor has said multiple times, we will never check the box on this. There is always more work that we can do. I think we've made great strides with Prop 123, with the 301 extension for 20 years. He was able to get that through the legislature before it expired and threatened nearly $700 million for our schools. So it's definitely progress that we're making. We're not there yet. We are above 2009 levels when adjusted for inflation, but not 2008. So we recognize in terms of the per pupil amount that you referenced. We're hoping that our average teacher pay will be above 2008 levels when adjusted for inflation. But we need to look beyond 2008. We need to set a new paradigm after we dig ourselves out of the recession. And one of the key ways we can do that is with the rainy day fund. That deposit will be very important in protecting these funding initiatives for the governor, so that education doesn't have to take another whack when we enter into the next recession, whenever that might be. Hopefully, it's as far as possible.
I just want to say, my name is Laura Villa with Single Area Agency on Aging, and I represent the Area Agency on Aging for Region 6, which consists of Ortiz, Grand Union, and Santa Cruz. I want to thank the Governor's Office for considering and for their post-appropriation to the Area Agencies on Aging to be able to eliminate the wait list in Arizona. I just want to say that, for so many years we've been fighting for this, and finally it looks like we're going to have it. So how likely is it to be approved officially?
It's our, we have control over the federal funds. They're not subject to legislative appropriation. Most of them aren't. In this case, we've been working in a partnership with the Department of Economic Security to identify a federal funding stream for this. It's not going to completely eliminate the backlog. I believe we have 3,200 statewide, and we showed Maricopa numbers. But it's going to take a bite out of the backlog, which has existed since the Great Recession. This is another example, similar to the county shifts, among other things, the school cuts, that we had to balance the budget and we had to make really horrible choices. So we're working on addressing that. It's, in my estimation, it's 100% likely to occur. Based on my understanding of the funding source, that is an executive decision that we will move forward on.
Thank you. Echoing a lot of the comments that Dr. Varona made, he touched on a couple things. One is it's a great proposal by the governor, but you're going to have to work with the legislature and revenue. Could you address how you think tax conformity is going to be handled in the legislature, because that's going to be a big issue in funding a lot of these proposals. Secondly, on the $32 safety fee, we're already hearing there's pushback in the legislature to at least look at ways to reduce that. One of the things that I think is of interest to us here locally is ADOT has really stepped up in their law enforcement of large vehicles. Could you guys take a look at that, because it seems like they've got a heck of a lot more officers out on the highway than they used to have, and why are they dipping into, I guess, the role of DPS when they shouldn't be? And lastly, we really support the $700,000 in support for the cold storage, but it would be really nice if all local government would support that as well. Would you look at maybe trying to get all the local governments to participate in funding for the cold storage?
That last one might be more about internal politics here in St. Cruz County.
Stay away from that.
Stay away, stay away.
Come on, Tin Man.
So you raised a really good point. We have our budget proposal and we've shared it with the legislature, and now they're going to begin hammering us with questions on every single issue, and they're going to try to poke holes. They're going to try to figure out if there's a catch behind some of the things that we're doing. And so having a good working relationship with our partners, particularly here in Santa Cruz County on that port, will be very important moving forward. The revenue forecasting, you can see the growth rates there, 3.3, 3.1, and 3.4. The legislature is actually higher than us. They're at 3.9. So for the first time in quite a while, the executive is now below the legislature, which is very unusual, because usually how it has been in the past, and there's another slide that I had when I presented before the Joint House Senate yesterday. The executive seems to look at the economy all the time with rose-colored glasses, and the revenues will be there to support the executive's initiatives. So they somewhat build the revenue forecast around the spending plan. This governor has been very disciplined in making sure that we can spend what we feel confident in knowing what will be there. So I think that's going to be a point of contention. The legislature has projected baseline spending. Their utility bills are a little higher than ours, and so that offsets some of the difference that we have. So we're going to have to, they have higher revenues to pay for a higher baseline. We have lower revenues because we have a lower baseline, and that will be something that goes back and forth. Tax conformity. This is a big issue at the legislature, but it's not in the budget. We don't contemplate any conformity revenue in the budget. We believe it's a separate thing. For those of you who might not know what tax conformity is, as part of the comprehensive tax package that came out of Washington, D.C. in the winter of 2017, they made some changes to how you will calculate your federal taxes. There's usually a starting point. It's called the federal adjusted gross income. It's what, after you make subtractions or additions or whatever you need to do in terms of exemptions, then that's kind of the starting point. And then you have deductions based on what that FAGI number is. And then after that, they apply the rate, whatever that rate is based on where you end up, to that FAGI that's adjusted, federally adjusted gross income. Starting point, how you calculate your federal taxes. To make things easy, the state of Arizona uses that FAGI in calculating your state income taxes. As a result of federal tax reform, we've taken out things that you would normally be able to exempt, or the feds have capped certain things. So what will happen is that your FAGI, if you haven't filed your federal taxes already, is higher. You will have a higher FAGI. So that means more of your income will be subject to taxation. On the state level, your FAGI goes up, which means that more of your income is subject to state taxation. That's what conformity means, to say we're going to use the federal rules for state purposes. If we had chosen to use the old FAGI from 2017, you would need to do one set of books for your federal filing and one set of books for your state filing. And we know that that would be a massive headache for individuals and businesses in Arizona. So we've issued guidance from the Department of Revenue. We've issued tax forms for tax year 2018. And the vendors, the turbo taxes and all of those people have gotten all the data. Assuming full conformity, which means we're going to use the new FAGI. That has to be ratified by the legislature. There are some in the legislature who say, well, you're going to have more revenue coming in, and we need to have a tax cut that offsets that revenue so that it's revenue neutral. The problem is, we really don't know how much revenue is going to come in from this. And no one does. Not the legislature, not the executive, not our Department of Revenue, and any estimate that they're using is speculative at best. So when they say, well, are you going to use a tax cut to make it revenue neutral? We respond and say, how can we make a tax cut revenue neutral if we don't know how much revenue is going to come in? So the executive's plan is, again, this is outside of the budget. We're not going to spend a dime on any revenue windfall that comes in from conformity. Put that money in the rainy day fund. Let's monitor it. Let's see what other states are doing. Take a breath, and then come back next year and evaluate the situation. But most importantly, give certainty to the Arizona taxpayers so that they can file their taxes and get on with it. That's what we want. That's what Arizonans want from us, is certainty in their taxes. Now, we do have a provision in state law that says that if the legislature decides to do something different, that taxpayers will be protected. So no matter what, Arizonans will be protected under any circumstance. So that's kind of where we are. We don't want to spend a dime of any windfall, whatever that might be. I've seen estimates of $50 million to $300 million. So if you're trying to budget on that, I mean, that provides quite a bit of uncertainty. And I'm sure many of you would agree. So that's kind of where we are in that situation. The public safety fee, a bill passed the Senate Appropriations Committee yesterday, unanimously, repealing the public safety fee and funding the highway patrol using general fund dollars. I can't speak on the executive's position, but I will say that we have funded the highway patrol using general fund in the past, and when we hit an economic recession, there's only one other vessel to tap for highway patrol funding, and that is her. So the executive doesn't really comment on pending legislation right now, but we're monitoring it. Thank you.
I'm Derwin Southers of the Hilltop Gallery Arts Education Center, and we appreciate your presentation, what you're trying to do, but we are very concerned that there's no continuation of art funding in the coming budget. We have, in our community, has benefited from an arts therapy program that we've undertaken in partnership with the Maricopa Community Health Center, and the therapeutic aspect of creating art is a recognized field of professional study. According to the Art Therapy Association, the unique power of art therapy helps people improve cognitive sensory motor functions, foster self-esteem and self-awareness, cultivate emotional resilience, and resolve conflicts and distress much in their lives. According to Mariposa, our county is seriously underserved by mental health professionals, and waiting time to see a professional is excessive and leads even to greater personal stress. So our program, which we could not have had without this funding from the state, has brought the arts to Santa Cruz County women as a healing and mental health enhancement tool, using trained persons to provide these sessions. Laypersons serves as a bridge to help mental health sufferers before or in addition to physician attention. Serve the Alzheimer's Association, other mental health groups related to classes, and also a community Boys and Girls Club and children on site. So it's a great part of our border community, the arts, and the mental health aspect is just one dimension of its value for continued funding in the future. So we want to put that thought for you folks. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Any?
Terry Shannon, past chairman of the Port Authority, Santa Cruz County Port Authority. The $700,000 is huge for economic development. Personally, thank the governor and the state for the vision, because that's just another tool, excuse me, in our toolbox for economic development. We've got a lot of things that are working in Nogales. We've got the flyover on Mariposa. We've been working really hard. This is just another tool to help. This is a $1 billion industry. That's $700,000 investment from the state is going to work towards a $1 billion industry. That's a no-brainer in our opinion, including the tax revenue, jobs in the summer when we're basically closed down, and it's our highest unemployment time of the year because produce is basically done. But these high-priced, delicate commodities that Texas is taking our lunch money every summer, now we'll have an opportunity to, the 200, 300 jobs that are being estimated by bringing just this cold storage to Nogales. So that is my thank you.
So Matt, thank you so much for coming out. I know it's always important to find out what the executive is thinking, and then we get updates at CSA with what the JLPC is doing. A couple of things that concern me is I know that there's a move to increase the empowerment scholarships, which takes more money away from public education after the voters in the state said no. I know there's one lady and one gentleman that are introducing that. I'm sure that would affect the governor's line on some of these. So the other things that I see and I read a lot about is the misappropriation of the funds on those empowerment scholarships and even some of the charter schools. And with all due respect to the gentleman that's in the legislature that created one with taxpayer dollars, it sold for $13 million, and he walks away with a windfall at $10 million at taxpayer expense. There should be a law that says that's not going to happen. It should go back into the state budget. It should be used for other things. So I hope as all this moves along and the governor looks good and he has that pen to veto some of these things. I mean, the voters have spoken in a lot of instances, and I don't think that anybody at that legislature should be trying to undermine what the rest of the state has done. So, I mean, there's a lot of good programs that the governor is wanting to do. We certainly support education and infrastructure. There's a lot of things that are needed throughout the state of Arizona. It's not just the great state of Maricopa, but there are 14 other counties that rely on what's going on. So we thank him for that. I know that we will keep a keen eye as this moves forward, because I think it's important that as he sees the importance of investing in the port down here, and I know that the governor and his staff have been very supportive of the Port Authority and some of the things that we've done as a community to improve the facilities, and we'll continue to do that. And but just a comment to make sure that a lot of what he's proposing is not undercut because you have other members of the legislature that think that they're smarter.
No, all legislators never think that. No.
Here's my comment, and I'm sticking to it.
I would say that the governor has publicly stated his interest in accountability and transparency in these areas. I know Senator Kate Brogan out of Phoenix has contemplated offering some bills to that. So he recognizes that, and our charter school package includes funding to help address some of those caseload issues. So that's good comments, and I'll take them back. Thank you. Anything else?
Liberal.
All right, thank you for coming.
They're not
Really
liberal, they're
appreciate it.
conservative. The Texans been conservative. He's a Texas been conservative.
I just want to be genuine. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking to be